Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast, and I am your host, Samuel. In this podcast, I interview top medical sales reps and leading medical sales executives across the entire country. And it doesn't matter what medical sales industry, from medical device to pharmaceutical to genetic testing to diagnostic lab, you name it. You will learn how to either break into the industry, be a top 5% performer within your role in sales, or climb the corporate ladder. Welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Hello and welcome to the Medical Sales Podcast. Today I have a guest that is very unique, very enterprising, and really embodies the whole go-getter mindset attitude. His name is Chris Light, and he's actually a board member and shareholder of Principal Health Systems. They're an organization that operates multiple entities in healthcare, from physician practices to labs, to surgery centers, and even some pharmacies. What I like about today's episode, though, and what you're going to see in the interview, is Chris talks about how he got to where he is today. And, he started in insurance sales and then when he got into medical sales, his medical sales career is kind of what opened him up to all the opportunities that he then went on to pursue and get to where he is today. And it's pretty fascinating because he captures that essence of just staying aware, keeping your eye on the prize of where can I take things next. And it's a very interesting episode. We even get into some perspectives on healthcare and how his career as an entrepreneur in healthcare has molded him to really start to focus on wanting to do what he believes can be really great solutions for some of the world's biggest problems. So enjoy the episode today. It's really good stuff, and I hope you learn a lot from it. And again, thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. So before we get started, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Visit evolveyoursuccess.com to find out more. All right. Hey, Chris, how are we doing today?
Very well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So this is Chris Light. He's the founding board member at Principal Health Systems. And today we're going to talk about his career and get into some things regarding the medical sales industry. So Chris, once again, thanks for showing up today. Let's get right into it. So tell us who you are.
Chris Light, originally from Florida, now live in Houston, Texas. And my day-to-day job right now is I have a couple of business partners in a company called Principal Health Systems. It's a diverse medical company with a handful of businesses underneath it.
So what does Principal Health Systems actually do? Give us some context.
Sure. So we own a handful of ancillary businesses, and then we also most recently purchased a interventional pain physician practice. So in the state of Texas, we have a practice. We have a couple laboratories, a couple pharmacies, a DME business, a diagnostic EMG mobile business.
Wow.
A stake in a surgical center, and I think that covers it.
And what's the goal? What's the mission statement with Principal Health Systems? What are you guys trying to do?
So our kind of tagline is personalized service, precision medicine. I think if you asked us what our goal was, we're not going after the precision medicine from like a cancer standpoint, which is typically what people think about that. We're more along the lines of providing a level of service to let physicians practice precision medicine. And so I would say we kind of got into this on the ancillary side. We got into ownership of a practice. And I think now, if I told you like our 5 or 10 year goal, there's a lot of consolidation, as you know, in healthcare from the standpoint of most physicians now work for a hospital system where it wasn't that case 10 years ago. And so growing that practice and kind of evolving into a true health system. So we always tell people we're like a health system without the hospital. So probably that's our goal, is to kind of become that and give physicians a place where they're not necessarily an employee like most of our big hospital systems that we see, but really where they can be true partners.
So who's your typical customer? Who's your first touch point when it comes to growing the business?
Yeah, so on the ancillary side, we have a large focus on musculoskeletal doctors. So our number one customers are A-list customers, you'd call them, which is going to be any orthopedic, neurosurgery, podiatry, and pain, interventional pain specialists. That's kind of a four. Now we service some other specialties outside of that, but that's kind of our call points.
Amazing. Okay. So the reason why it's so great to hear this is because you actually started as a sales rep, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So take us back to college. Actually, take us back to childhood.
Sure.
What did you envision your life being? What did you want, if anything? And then take us to college. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, when I was little, I wanted to play professional baseball for a living. And so obviously that didn't pan out like for most people.
Sure.
But so my dad is a salesman. And so I kind of wasn't sure what I was going to do in school, but I kind of figured something along those lines from a standpoint. I've been motivated to like have a strong career, like very early on. Like I knew, I was going to be very much career driven person. I didn't know 100% was going to be in sales, but I ended up getting a job my senior year of college. I was managing a gym, and a gentleman who worked at the gym offered me a job when I was a senior. And so I ultimately finished night school and worked during the day for him. So that ended up being in insurance sales. So that was technically my first job in sales. And so he kind of started to teach me that.
Got it. So you had this job before college, right?
Yeah. I worked my senior year of college. I finished school on night classes so that I could work. Yeah.
Got it. And then your first job out of college, what was that?
Well, so same job. So he hired me and basically said like, hey, during school, I'll start teaching you everything that you can know. And then when you finish school, kind of move you into the sales role, which is what I did.
Got it. And that was Creekmore Insurance Group.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell us what happened next. I mean, after Creekmore, you got your insurance experience, you got some sales experience. What did you want to do after that?
Yeah. So honestly, I kind of envisioned myself being in insurance. I still think that's a really good career for a lot of people. And I looked at myself like, I would tell myself like, I'm going to have a brokerage like this. The gentleman that I worked for was incredibly successful. Really nothing more than you could ask for, I think, for most people. There was just a kind of like a string of instances that happened. And then I had a friend that I went to school with ultimately who worked for the company that I went to work for. And I just casually talking to her, telling her some of the things that I was thinking about. And she's like, hey, you should really come to work for this company. Amazing opportunity. But then ultimately she was like, don't take the interview if you're not going to take the job. The job. And so, I did it and then left. So.
And that was Millennium Health.
Yes. Yeah. And so I moved from Florida to Arizona.
So then it wasn't so much that you were thinking you have to work in this space of Millennium Health. You were more so exposed to an opportunity. It sounded good and you took it.
100%. Yeah. I used to joke all the time, man. You can sell toothpicks and make money. I'll sell toothpicks.
Okay. So then tell us, when you got into Millennium Health, what was that experience like? First of all, tell us what you did there and then what that experience was like.
Yeah. So I started as a customer service rep. Ultimately, when I resigned, I was a regional manager for Texas and Louisiana. So we sold toxicology testing. So, fancy, you would call it therapeutic drug monitoring is what they used to call it. But at the end of the day, it was urine toxicology. And so it was primarily marketed toward physicians who write opioids, right? And still used heavily to this day. You're basically doing a urine test for two reasons. One, in an addiction standpoint, to make sure there's no drugs in the system, versus two, I prescribed you opiates and benzos. And so I want to make sure that those are the only drugs in your system and that the drugs that I prescribed are in your system.
Sure.
So that was pretty much it.
And then, so you had experience at Millennium Health. What took you to your next step? What did you when we talked earlier, you talked about you really went into entrepreneurship after that. How did you even make that transition? It was Millennium Health. You were selling toxicology testing. Then what?
Yeah, I would say a few things. One is, so I did really well in sales at Millennium. So I ended up in President's Club and then I got promoted. And so when I got promoted, you were a salesman, good salesmen don't have to work 80 hours a week.
Hey, come on, own it.
And so I had a manager who was on board with that. And not that I didn't work. I mean, we obviously were one of the top reps. So, but I would say 35 hours a week, but we were crushing sales, Yeah. I got promoted. I felt like I started working 70 overnight and kind of lived on the road, running with reps, taking, corporate calls all night, living in a hotel. And so ultimately, really quickly, I was only a manager for 3 months because I quit. And so I had always told myself I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And I kind of grew up idolizing entrepreneurs, I guess you could say. And so ultimately it got to a point where I was like, I'm just going to do it. And so it just happened. So I tried to take my manager with me.
Wow. And
originally I thought he was going to. This is going to go in public. He may hear this. He didn't come the night before he was like, hey, I'm not going to leave. And I was like, man, I've told everybody that I know that I'm leaving. I'm out. I'm not turning back. And so,
Right.
yeah, I would say it was largely spurred by the company that we worked for got very red tape and corporate, which is a great thing if you own the company. It's just
Right.
not a thing for me and for as an employee. And I just felt like things were changing and I was just going to jump at an opportunity.
So how did you create this opportunity then with Greenlight Medical? I mean, what did you have it brewing? Was it something that you just decided to put together when you were certain you were leaving? I mean, how did it come about?
Yeah, nothing really special, I think. And so we have a sales team now. I think the mark of a good sales rep is someone who goes beyond their product and helping their providers, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the product that I ultimately recreated, most businesses aren't, I didn't create Facebook. The product existed elsewhere, and so I had, by trying to be a resource to physicians, I had directed people to this product. They didn't know who I was or, nothing I got paid for. And I just saw an opportunity to be like, hey, I can create a product like this. I've got great relationships. Hopefully I can make it a little bit better from the standpoint of the customer experience. And that's ultimately how it happened. I was a competitive product I was familiar with.
Sure.
Yeah.
How long would you say from deciding to leave or knowing when you were going to leave to having a product that you could now sell and sustain yourself with? What was that time span?
Pretty quick. I mean, I was only a manager for 3 months. And so I probably wasn't even thinking about quitting for the first month or two because you're so excited to be in a new role and, kind of moving up the ladder.
Right.
I would say once we decided to leave, I'll also add that they presented us with a new non-compete that was required. And that was probably the catalyst. It was like 7 pages long. It was a long one. And I was like, I'm going to sign this. It was probably the catalyst. I mean, maybe a month. And then once I quit, we hit the ground running quick. I probably had a product live 2 to 3 months.
Wow. And you say we, so you already had some people you were starting to work with.
As far as from the business side?
Yeah, from the founding side of Greenlight Medical.
No. So I was the only owner of the product. I say we. I had a developer who was a buddy that I went to college with, and he literally was doing it. He had a full-time job, so he built it on nights and weekends.
Wow.
Part-time. He built the product for me, and we launched it fairly quickly.
That's amazing. And that was history after that. You just stayed focused and went forward.
Yeah. It went, yeah.
So then talk to me about where does Harvest Labs and TW Safety, where do they come in? I see that you're co-founder and co-owner.
Yeah. So Harvest Labs, ultimately I had a 1-year non-compete from Millennium. And so I ultimately knew that I could get back into that business from the standpoint of the margins and the revenues, and were significantly greater than what I was doing at Greenlight, right?
Sure.
Although it was still a good business. So once my non-compete had ended, literally on the day, we probably opened up the lab, right? Like I had been planning it for months, and then on the day we opened it up. And really, to be honest, I don't think I ever went back after my previous customers. I was super grateful for Millennium. It was like it'll be the single a huge life-changing job for me financially, just mindset, like tons, I'm super grateful for that job.
Yeah.
And so I don't think I ever really approached any of my previous customers.
Gotcha.
And ultimately Millennium helped me build Greenlight. Like I had tons of referrals from their sales team, but I started a laboratory with 2 physicians, and we started, a laboratory with goals of, trying to make it something special.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's excellent. That's beautiful. Wow. Okay. So then walk me through the rest, because you still had experiences at Concord Life Sciences and then finally Principal Health Systems.
Yeah. So I left Harvest. Ultimately, I had 2 partners. We had a partnership disagreement. I thought that I was deserving of more equity, and I learned a lot about ego during that time.
Sure.
And so I was the main driver of the business. I was partnered with 2 physicians who ultimately had full-time jobs outside. And the way we structured it, we were paid equally. And so I felt like I made them a lot of money in the process. They were involved, but not to the point where I was.
Yeah.
So I basically presented my case to become the majority partner. And at first it was very well received, and then it was not well received. So I tried to buy them out. They did not want to. And so I said, well, then you can buy me out. I'm going to go do my own thing. And so ultimately we struck up an agreement. They bought me out, and I left. And ultimately the next month started Concord Life Sciences, which is the lab that I'm sitting in today.
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow. So when I hear your story, I mean, it sounds like really at the end of the day, you're someone that if an opportunity is presented and it makes sense, you're going to take full advantage of it and you're not going to let it get past you.
Try to, yeah. I think.
Is that fair or what? How would you describe it?
No, I think that's accurate. I mean, I feel like at this stage I could drown an opportunity, So I try to stay more focused on growing something. Because I mean, if you look at my career, I would say if I was to interview myself, I think the biggest knock, I joked with my business partners recently. I'm like, this is the longest job I've ever had, you know? And so now I'm looking at something, I'm like, wow, you can really see how time and attention to one thing can really grow.
Sure.
And I've never really gotten to experience that. And so I say now, I would say I could drown an opportunity. I'm trying to be more focused.
Gotcha. I hope you're enjoying today's episode. And I want to let you know that I have a couple of programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and masterfully navigate your career to executive level leadership. Visit evolveyoursuccess.com to find out more. So what would you say, and I love just how, I mean, real quick for our audience, the time span from leaving Millennium to now is how long?
I resigned from Millennium in March, I believe, this is from memory, 2013.
Okay.
And we're now I'm about 7.5 years out, I would say.
7.5 years out. Yeah. Got it. So in 7.5 years, you've jumped into opportunity after opportunity and you've kind of leveraged it into bigger opportunities.
Yeah. What
is the reason for that? What would you say sustains you to making that happen on a consistent basis? That you wake up in the morning and you're driven to go out and do this?
That's a tough question and kind of something I think from a sales standpoint, I think is something that companies look for, someone who kind of wakes up and has that drive. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's a tough question. I mean, to me, it's like, I always tell people when I interview, like, I can't teach you to get out of bed and want to do it. Like, right. I can teach you the product, but I can't teach you like to want to do it. You know?
Right.
I don't know. I feel like that's in me. Maybe it's something that I was raised with. I'm one of 5. I wouldn't say we all share that trait, Sure. I'm not sure. For me, it's like progress. You want more, you want to do better, you want, growth. And so for me, I don't know if I have a great answer for that.
No, there's no wrong answer. No, it's just your truth.
Yeah.
But that's important for everyone to understand because you've created some amazing things. So it's good to know what drives that. And if what you're saying is that it's just the nature of who you were, which is why you were drawn to sales in the first place, then that's important for everyone to take note of, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think leadership in general is something that I think a lot of people, it's very much a nature versus nurture, argument. But I think leaders wake up and they just do it,
Right.
Like I was the captain of a baseball team in high school that I didn't start on. And I'm like, it's kind of a compliment, but it's kind of like you're not even good enough to start,
Right. But it speaks to a skill set.
But anyway, I just, at this point I have a family, I have goals. I've always written down my goals. And so it's just like, it's just, you wake up and you want to get out, the same thing you're doing, like, you just get up and go after it, right?
Hey, that's well said. Well said. Yeah. Get up and go after it. So your focus has been in healthcare, but when you got into Millennium, it wasn't necessarily because you wanted to be in healthcare. It's because there was an opportunity and you took it.
Yeah.
How has that shaped what you want to do now? Is it that healthcare was just a great business and it's healthcare, so why not? Or would you say that you have found this kind of secret passion for healthcare specifically?
That's a good $1 million question. I did not get into healthcare because, it's because I was like, I want to help people.
Sure.
I'd be lying to you. I think a lot of people say that. Everybody says that I interview. But that wasn't the case for me. I mean, I remember to the T, I told the lady, who said, why do you want to be here? And I said, I want to make money. Like that was it. And she was like, and I was like, I'm sorry if you don't like that answer. She's like, I love it.
Hey, it's honest.
So I think now that I've been in healthcare, I've been in healthcare about a decade, So I think now, especially having a physician practice, it's something that I call it kind of like campfire talks when you're having a beer, solving the world's problems, I think about that all the time and talk about it with my business partners and people we work with. I think healthcare is ripe for disruption in many different ways, but I also think it's like the Titanic, and to move it with some of the institutional, just from how insurance works and, all the whole nine, I think we'll see a little bit chip away in lots of it chip away, but it's something I think about all the time. So I'm passionate about that. I would say, frankly, it's easier said than done in the insurance world that we live in.
Sure.
To make those kinds of changes. But, you see things like Berkshire Hathaway and Amazon, putting together these health systems. And so those are, out there, remain to be seen how they show up. But I think there's a lot of room for disruption in healthcare. So I think about it all the time. So I would say I'm passionate about solving a lot of healthcare's problems.
God, no, I love that. I love that. With that being said, is there any you can share with us, some things that just come top of mind when you think about that right now?
Yeah, this will be controversial.
Hey, this is the whole point. You better speak your mind. We're listening. We are listening. Speak your mind.
I think in healthcare, from what I can see, we're at a place now where, as a provider of healthcare and healthcare services, not myself directly, but we have a clinic in healthcare services, more so than ever, we see insurance dictate what you're allowed to have or what you're allowed to receive or what surgeries are approved. And those checks and balances are in place for a reason, because there's been lots of people who've abused their privilege, right? And so I think the balance right now is probably overskewed toward the insurance company of dictating that care. And then beyond that, from a standpoint of cost of care, I personally think that the problem is not in necessarily our health system, but it's in having an accountability from a standpoint of our personal selves, right? There's definitely things that we're born with or things that we can't necessarily plan for, like, catastrophic incidences, right?
Sure.
Like car accidents and things like that. But I think the American way is McDonald's and TV and no gym. And so I think I can tell you, we have a physician practice. The average person is obese.
Got it.
When the average person is not obese, just things like pressure on joints they don't exist, right? And so to me, I always say it's super controversial, and I'm sure somebody will listen to this and tell me why that they can't, their thyroid is the reason that they can't control it.
Sure.
And I'm not here to say that that's not true.
Okay.
But by and large, we can impact or control our body mass index. And I think that should go into cost of insurance, because there's no incentive, right? I pay the same insurance. If me and you are the same age, both male, both non-smoker, we pay the same. Whether you weigh 400 pounds or you weigh 120 pounds, same cost. And so I think incentivizing people or penalizing people for that standpoint, most people, if there's a repercussion, they'll deal with it differently, I
see. So let me make sure we all understand, and I'm going to do my best to take what you're saying and paraphrase. So You're saying that maybe if we created this incentivized patients to say, you know what, you particularly don't have any ailments as far as why you're overweight, and you have an opportunity to change that. If you do, your insurance will be less.
100%.
And if you don't, then that's fine too. But this is what you're going to pay. Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you an example. So I sold life insurance.
Okay.
The ratings when you apply for life insurance, if you have life insurance, there's like preferred, super preferred, right? These are the healthiest people, the least amount of risk. Then there's standard, which is like, a C in school, like your average.
Sure.
And then it goes into substandard, right? So these are all the ailments, because your risk, you have a higher risk percentage of dying, right? And they're double, triple the premium. I mean, it gets expensive, right?
Sure. Yeah.
Because we're allowed to legally do it. So anyway, I'm a firm believer in overwhelmingly, not 100%, but most disease is lifestyle disease. And I'm not saying I could have some of these same things too. I'm not saying it, as an elitist. I'm saying, but I think from the standpoint of the cost of medicine, I think that's a big part of it.
Sure. No, I mean, you actually have a very interesting perspective, because you worked in the insurance game. So you have an insight that most of us do not have, right? Yeah. And you're in a position now where you get to see a lot of the profile of a lot of different types of patients, to the point where you can say, I'm starting to notice that patients need more of an incentive. My question with that is, what are your physicians saying about this? Are they in agreement? Are they all over the place as far as some agree, some don't? Or are they in disagreement? Where do they stand?
I mean, this is anecdotal, but I've spoken to many physicians over the years. Most physicians who are in musculoskeletal, especially chronic pain.
Sure.
And don't get me wrong, we've got cancer survivors, failed back surgeries, amputated patients. We've got a lot of sick patients. But I would tell you, like a lot of people would tell you, if without overweight, the clinic would be less
profitable. We can say it. Look, this is a safe space to voice opinions. And our audience knows that we do everything we can to speak the truth here. So we're not here to filter our opinions and what we believe we experience. So, okay.
That someone who's lighter puts less pressure on their knees.
Right.
That's a fact.
That is a fact, and that goes hand in hand. So actually, you have a lot of providers that are in agreement with how you see it.
Anecdotal. This is nothing, scientific. Just
sure. So what's the reality of actually implementing something like this?
Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, we're in a world now where after, I don't know if we call it Obamacare or whatever, the health insurance reform that was implemented under Obama was basically doesn't allow discrimination. So you're effectively reversing legislation at that standpoint.
Yep.
And that is going to put us on Capitol Hill, and you won't see me heading that way.
So this is not an aspiration then?
No. We'll play within the rules that I'm given.
Got it. No, but hey, it's a very ambitious idea.
Yeah.
And like you said, I'm sure both sides can be argued. It can be argued very, very well.
Sure.
But that does bring me to my next question, though.
Yeah.
What do you see for the future? And before you answer that, and that can be a really nebulous question because you're clearly someone that just, it's dynamic. But if you were to just think, in 5 years out, going along with this newfound principle you're choosing to operate by focusing on one thing and seeing something play out for the long term, where would you like to be with this in maybe 5 years?
In 5 years. So our practice when we took it over, it had 5 locations. We shut it down to 3. I think it'll expand rapidly. If I'm being aspirational, we'll be the largest pain practice in Texas in 5 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's a goal.
Yeah.
Hey, come on, put it out there. That's a beautiful goal. That's awesome, Chris. I like to hear that. This whole point is to talk about these things and to allow people to see what you can really accomplish if you put your mind to it, and having some attachment to the medical sales industry. Sure. So it's lovely to hear that you're doing this and that you came from that industry as well. So if there's something you can go back and tell yourself, maybe before Millennium Health, that, with all the information now and all the things you've done with your career, what would that be?
I mean, I kind of feel like I did it, but just take the chance on the opportunity, There's a lot of unknowns. I've lived in multiple cities and some people are okay with that, just moving to a city and not knowing anybody and chasing opportunity. I mean, I would have moved anywhere for the right opportunity. So I don't know if I would necessarily change that, but I just, as a word of advice, to me, I think that take opportunities when they arise, and sometimes they'll be a little uncomfortable.
Gotcha. And for our audience, it comprises all kinds of listeners. Some people want to get into the industry in any field. Some people know exactly what field. Some people are in the industry and they want to just be a top performer and executive. Some people want to get out and do something like what you did. What's some advice you would give to our listeners about, I guess, like you said, getting up and going after it? What's something along those lines that you can share that you give to our listeners?
I think it's really important to have dreams, right? I think a lot of people stop dreaming or have had dreams in the past. And so I think goals and verbalizing those goals and even writing them down and knowing kind of where you want to go, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's just vitally important. And not that it's entrepreneurship for anybody. Sometimes, you can have a storied career in medical sales, make crazy. There's 7-figure medical sales reps all over the place, right? And so it's just knowing what you want and then putting in the work from a standpoint of not just going to work from 9 to 5, but putting in the work and investing in relationships and networks and continuing education to put yourself in a position where you just have tools and relationships and networks that can't be built in a day, right? And so time is on your side. It's kind of like investing compounded interest, Sure, yeah. It's like you can't replace that. So starting now is the best time to start wherever you are now, get started.
Right. No, I love it. Chris, this was enlightening and we really appreciate the time. Thanks again for taking it with us. And we're going to get back in touch, and we're going to have a part 2 to this, because I got to see what we have more things to discuss regarding your ambitious plan that's going to lead you to Capitol Hill. Because you're saying it now, you have nothing to do with it, but I can already see you there in some space doing something. So we'll continue this conversation. Thanks again for coming on the show, and look forward to talking to you again.
I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
Definitely. Now, I told you that was going to be an interesting episode. We covered quite a bit of ground there. Again, Chris got to enlighten us with his aggressive career in just jumping on opportunities when they come. I think we can all take note of doing that, especially if you're someone that wants to get into the industry, take the opportunity. You're someone that wants to advance within the industry, take the opportunity. You're someone that wants to do something like what he did and leave the industry to go do your own thing, take the opportunity. I champion that to the nth degree. I think it's very inspiring. And again, we should all be trying to do that. Now, as far as the ambitious plans go with incentivizing healthcare, it's not a crazy idea, actually. Insurance really does work that way. And insurance is critical for all of us. We all absolutely need it. And if they can do that so freely, why couldn't it be applied to other scenarios, especially when dealing with healthcare? Now, am I a fan of it particularly? I can't say that. Am I against it? I'm not even sure I can say that. I really do think it's pretty nuanced. Being in the medical sales field, I've seen all types of things. I've seen patients that had no idea what was going on and they were compromised. And I've seen patients that completely abused the God-given health they were given, and just did whatever they wanted to do in their own lives. And I've also seen not just patients, but I've also seen people that have other things going on. And, food can be an addiction, and it causes all kinds of problems that they really don't know how to deal with on their own. So it can become a pretty convoluted argument pretty quickly. But just to even propose it, I think is very bold, and I think is very ambitious. And again, Chris was coming from a perspective that a lot of us don't have. A lot of us don't have an insurance background, and a lot of us aren't running a health system and able to see the profiles of so many different patients to even come to those kinds of conclusions. But what I do like, and what I want us to all walk away with, that I think we can gain from this interview, is, again, really pay attention to the opportunities around you. I think every day we experience opportunities, and we have to design a life for ourselves that allows us to appreciate those opportunities and jump on them when they can really serve places we want to be. And something else that Chris said that I'm gonna propose as a challenge, as I always do, is, at the very end of this episode, he said to keep on dreaming. People should continue to dream. Hold on to their dreams. Don't let them wither away. And I want to challenge everyone listening to do that today. Whatever your dream is, especially the dream that as you matured in life, you kind of said, what, I'm putting that one in the back. I want you to find one that is still realistic, but you've maybe decided to ignore because you're afraid that it just cannot be a reality, or you don't want to embrace, going on a limb and taking that chance. I want you to think of whatever that dream is and play with it today. Take the time to really evaluate it and see if it's something you still can't bring to fruition. I think it's such an important thing for us to continue to dream. Even me being able to share all of these amazing guests with you that are doing all sorts of things within this industry, and being able to provide a resource that helps people get into the industry and excel within the industry. That stemmed from a dream. I didn't leave college or even start my career wanting to do those things. I started to dream about those things and start to see, what would that look like? What could that look like? And then here we are. So regardless of scale, small scale, large scale, I challenge everyone to dream. And if you want to share any of those dreams, feel free to go to the website, evolveyoursuccess.com. At the bottom right, you'll see send a voice message, and leave a voice message about whatever your dream is. You can just, one-liner, two-liner about what you're dreaming of and what you want to accomplish. And if you're okay with it, we will share it on the show in a future episode. Again, I want to say thank you for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. Because of you guests out there that really love this information, love hearing from medical sales professionals that are doing all sorts of different things out there in their careers. You have allowed me to continue to bring you all of these resources and bring you all of these stories and these interviews. And I appreciate it. And I sincerely appreciate that you appreciate it. I get comments all the time about how people are listening to these episodes and getting some really good insights. And it's really helping them develop in their own right. So again, if you're looking to get into the industry, medical device sales, pharmaceutical sales, genetic testing sales, toxicology sales, then, check out evolveyoursuccess.com, take the assessment, get some insight on what you can do to get closer to that reality. And, we have some programs, the Medical Sales Career Builder, that will get you right on track, pair you with the right people, teach you the right things to get a position. And if you're looking to excel within your sales role, check out our website as well and check out the Sales Builder program designed to help you excel within your sales role and truly operate as a high performer. That'll be it for today, and tune in next week for another amazing guest with another amazing story to provide more amazing resources for you to listen to. Thank you again for listening to the Medical Sales Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember, I have a couple programs that show you exactly how to break into the medical sales industry, become a top-performing medical sales professional, and also how to masterfully navigate your career to executive-level leadership. Check out these programs and learn more at evolveyoursuccess.com. Stay tuned for more awesome content with amazing interviews.